Hey everybody on YouTube, Eric Hayden here in the garden, or at least in the garage. Want to give you a quick update on the potted roses. We've been especially cold here the last couple days. You northerners are probably going to laugh, but we've been in the low 20s for overnight lows. 22 one morning, 23 the next. Daytime highs in the 30s, which is respectable for us. So just to be super safe, I brought these roses in. You'll see that some of them, all of them are pushing out, some more than others. I would leave them in the garage more and bring them in every single night if I wanted these to grow quicker. But I'm just trying to keep them from getting too cold. Roses can certainly survive 20s, but being in a smaller pot like this and not in the ground or covered, I didn't want to do any damage. And you can see they are leafing out quite a bit. So we'll primarily leave these out in the yard, even nighttime lows in the 30s or near 30. I left them outside. So pretty much 95% of the winter, they will be outside and stay outside. But if we have nighttime lows below about 26, I'll certainly bring them in. But I wanted to give you an update and show you what they're looking like. Certainly leafing out. And again, this is not just because they've been in the garage the last 2 days. This is, we've had warm days in the 60s in addition to nights in the 20s. So it's kind of been all over the place. That's one of the advantages of these pots or potted roses. When you start them off in pots, you can protect them from the extremes, super cold or super warm, and you can water them as needed. All right, we're back outside. The roses are on the deck, and they may stay there for the rest of the winter. Low to mid 20s is about as cold as we get here in eastern North Carolina. So if we get below 25 or 26 again, I'll bring them inside. Otherwise, those will stay outside. In the 50s today, so not too bad. Burning some brush in our fire pit. I want to talk a little bit about rose hips, and I want to talk about watering and weeding in the wintertime garden. For the most part, in fact, for many of us, we don't need to do anything, but I want to talk about a couple chores you can do if you're looking to do something or if it's necessary. First off, this caught my attention. This is a rose hip on Dublin Bay. It's a climber, very, very beautiful. The animals like this. This is the fruit and the seeds of the rose. Hybridizers cross roses and they harvest these hips to produce new plants. They signify fall and winter. If you leave them on your bush and you let the rose go dormant, it protects it more from the cold. It's also very, very nice. So wintertime gardening, what do you need to be doing in your garden? Nothing. For most of you, just let it be. You've pruned maybe a little bit in the fall. You've done some weeding. The garden is looking good. Let it rest. The rose bushes need to rest, and so do you. So for the most part, wintertime gardening is easy. Just let things be. A couple things you can do if you really, really want to. One is watering. Some folks ask those questions. By and large, you don't need to water during the wintertime. The plants aren't actively growing like they are in the summer. If you have a really dry stretch, we're talking more than 10 or 14 days where you don't have rain, maybe then you could consider a little light watering. But if you have normal winter rains, again, every 1 to 2 weeks roughly, don't worry about it. You don't need to be watering the roses. Again, if you have a really dry period and then maybe some cold is coming down the line, you want to make sure those plants are hydrated, no problem. The other thing you might notice in the southern garden, despite the roses being dormant, there still is some young tender growth near the top. Can't stop Mother Nature. We've had some days in the 60s. Just let things be. You have to keep in mind that we took the bush down a third in the fall. We'll take maybe another quarter off in the springtime. So any tender growth that has died off, any canes that have died back, we're going to prune that out. So don't worry about top growth down south. Up north, you're talking about, what are you talking about, Eric? We've got a foot of snow on the ground and it's cold. But down here, since we still get warm in the wintertime, we still get a little tender growth on the tops of the plants. And it doesn't matter because the top of the bush, the end of the canes, the bud eyes are more dormant, perhaps even producing leaves. But you got to remember, as you go lower on the bush, down toward the base, here's a bud eye here, and here's a bud eye there. They are very dormant bud eyes. So there's one right there. So they can take very cold temperatures. And again, you'll just prune out any winter damage come February or March. So winter gardening, for the most part, lay back. Maybe focus on organizing your fertilizers, your chemicals, seeing if you need to stock up on anything. Winter watering, don't worry about it unless it's exceptionally dry, more than 10 or 14 days. And even then, I wouldn't be overly concerned. One last thing you can kind of watch, notice the beds have been cleaned of weeds. I like to start fresh in the spring. I always have high hopes that we'll have a weed-free garden. Hasn't happened yet, but in the wintertime, you'll notice despite weeding and putting down a pre-emergent, there's just a few weeds popping up. Now's a good time to either pluck them, or I really don't like to disturb the soil at all with that pre-emergent down. So I'll squirt them with a little Roundup, glyphosate. Again, our bushes are very, very wide apart because we've pruned them. So no danger of getting it on the bush. Just do it when it's warm out and a calm day, maybe first thing in the morning. And the reason why I like a nice weed-free garden going into the spring, that gives you a fighting chance to stay as weed-free as you can throughout the upcoming season. So that's it, winter gardening. Check out some of those hips on some of your roses. Lay back, relax, maybe a light weeding or watering if absolutely necessary. Next time we're going to talk about these oak leaves. I've got a nice mulch in the garden, so I don't really want to disturb that, but I am going to add more mulch in the spring. So I'm thinking I might try to blow these into a pile, chop them up and put them in the garden. If I do, I'll make a video on that. Chopped up leaves are very, very good for the garden. The worms love it. It will turn into a nice organic humus. In fact, in New York, that's what I mulched with. We had a municipality that sucked up the leaves, and it was leaf mold or leaf compost. It wasn't mixed with anything else. They constantly turned them on an airport runway once a week, and you got this fine, crumbly leaf mold or compost. The downside is it would disappear like that by about midsummer, but it has a really good moisture retention. It's very, very good to retain moisture in the garden, to aerate the garden. Acts very similar to some other products like peat moss, except it's better for the environment because it's renewable. Leaves are every year, and the worms like them. So again, if you've got some chopped up leaves, especially oak leaves, a pretty good source. I don't want to send those to the compost pile at the dump. I'll probably put these in my garden, and if I do, I'll make a video on that. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. I know it's been a crazy year, and we certainly look forward to some better times ahead. As always, I appreciate the new subscribers and likes and comments. I look at all of those, and I certainly appreciate you growing with me in this love of roses that we have. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you around.